Hello and welcome to Redshirt Cinema Club, a weekly podcast about falling in love with Star Trek. This week's movie is Star Trek Nemesis, the final outing for the TNG crew and the second movie in a row to seriously divide opinion. Join us as we discuss Tom Hardy's hairline, Councillor Troy's newfound telepathy, and that goodbye. Is Rob a Star Trek fan yet? Maybe, if we all cross our fingers.
Our eyes reflect our lives, don't they? I can see as well as you can. I can feel everything you feel. In fact, I can feel exactly what you feel.
He said he's a mirror for me. I need to know where the hell he came from.
The same blood runs through our veins.
It was as if part of me had been stolen.
I can feel your hunger.
I must deactivate you. Why? Because you are dangerous.
Look in the mirror. See yourself.
I'm a mirror for you as well.
Don't be so vain. Set a course for Earth. Kill everything.
Hello, welcome back to Redshirt Cinema Club. My name is David Jackson. I'm your captain today, as always. And as always, I'm joined by Lieutenant Nathan Dighton.
I like the way that you do it now. It's more in the line of like
a flight.
Flying plane.
Yeah. Well, the Enterprise had passengers on it, you know.
I've got nothing for that. I'm sorry.
That's true.
I really wanted to keep that going. But
Rob wouldn't have known this. But yeah, it did. It was transporting passengers. Weird. I always thought it was so weird. Because they're also exploring the galaxy and getting into big
just
fights.
Like go to the neutral zone.
It'd be
and
worse.
If you're a passenger,
it's like, you know, one of those flight companies that notoriously doesn't land where it's supposed to land.
Yeah.
We're supposed to be going to Mars. I'm sorry, we've picked up a distress signal from the neutral zone.
Yeah.
We have to go there.
It's like if British Airways had like Sidewinder missiles under the wings as well, just in case.
I know,
It's
yeah,
like, we might get into something.
And then insisted to everyone that they were an exploration and science vessel.
Yeah,
like, well,
exactly.
Why do you have those missiles?
And we're also joined, you may have heard, by Ensign Rob Pearson, who
Hello.
will be firing those missiles willy-nilly. In our continuing mission to make Rob a Star Trek fan, we have reached or fallen back to Warp 4 following Star Trek Insurrection last week. We had been at our personal best of Warp 6.
Warp 4 is still some warps.
It's still some warps. It's better than none. And we have now reached Star Trek Nemesis, which we're going to be talking about today. If you haven't watched Star Trek Nemesis yet, you're still welcome to join us, but just know this podcast will be chock full of spoilers. There's no nook or cranny we won't be exploring. And we're going to get into the spoilers right away, starting as we always do with Rob's synopsis. This will be good, of Star Trek Nemesis.
Will it be good? I hope so.
Let's go. No pressure.
So we start Star Trek Nemesis. You can tell they've got the digital effects out because we get like a nice exterior shot of like the Romulan Senate place, which
2002,
reminded me quite a lot of exterior shots on the planet of Naboo.
Oh yeah,
from the Phantom Menace.
I was thinking Final Fantasy.
Have they just asked, can we borrow your Have you got any exterior shots you didn't use? Phantom Menace, just use those. Lots of very digital people walking around outside, I noticed. But cool. Anyway, we go inside the Romulan Senate and they're all debating about something, like they've got a proposal for peace, and some of them are like, yeah, some are like, no. And then
debates.
They're all killed.
Yeah.
A mysterious device that is inside this room,
Lacks security.
for reasons that I'm not quite clear about, opens up and fires some green stuff in the air, and everyone gets turned to stone.
Wasn't it supposed to be that lady's bag? It's like, oh, Margaret's left her
It
bag
looked like a
behind.
button.
Oh.
Margaret's left a button behind.
Yeah.
Big button.
Well, it was a quite nasty death scene. I
thought so, yeah.
Quite good.
Straight off the bat, we're dealing with something very horrible here. Anyway, cut to a much nicer bit where Riker and Troy are getting married, and Picard does a really nice speech, and all the crew are there celebrating, and it's lovely. And Riker back on board the ship. It's like, well, I'm going. You're going to let me go now, but not quite, because they received a mysterious
Hang on a minute.
signal. They've picked up a mysterious signal.
Don't worry, we'll still get you to your wedding, but
From
first.
somewhere near the Romulan neutral zone, and Data in particular is quite perturbed by this signal.
It's a positronic
A
signal.
positronic signal, which I think means some kind of artificial life form.
Yes.
So Picard decides, well, I think we should check it out. I think we should go. And so they go, and I think Picard really just wants to test out the new buggy that the Enterprise has been fitted with
where have they
this
been
time.
hiding that?
So it's like, oh yeah, so they get the little ship with the away team on it, which is Data, Worf, and Picard. Flies down to the planet's surface, and then out of that comes the buggy, and Picard's having a great time, and I suspect also Patrick Stewart is having a great time.
Immediately pulls a donut.
I did read on the IMDb trivia page that he did lots of his own driving for this scene.
But not all of it, because I could just see.
but that
not
guy
all of it.
from Generations is back.
Yeah.
Not the bit where he leaps off a cliff into the back of the buggy
No.
I'm sure they did that
afterwards,
in real life.
which is
Fine.
very cool.
How
Anyway, on the planet,
coincidental that they find other people with buggies on the planet as well.
it's
I know.
Yeah, just one of those bits where should we just put an action scene in here? Yeah,
Buggies.
because they basically they go on a little scavenger hunt across the planet and find lots of body parts of an android
Yep.
that is almost like an exact replica of Data, and it turns out to be a prototype, hilariously named B4.
I only
Yes.
got that while watching the film yesterday.
And-
Unbelievably.
I enjoyed that pun. Anyway, so they pick up the android parts. There's like some people who live on this planet, and they got buggies, and they don't like anyone coming to their planet, so they chase Picard, and Worf's firing a cannon out the back. We get a little action scene. I know it's directed by Stuart Baird, who's known for directing action movies, and obviously he was like, we need an action scene.
Yeah, we do.
And it felt more like a traditional action scene than I think I've ever seen in a Star Trek movie up until now. Just a car chase with guns and stuff.
Yeah, car chase in Star Trek.
They get back to the Enterprise. They put the android B4 back together. They start questioning him. It turns out he's slightly more primitive than Data, despite the fact that he has the exact same wiring, and Data tries to download his own memories and experiences into B4, but still he doesn't have the spark, the individualism that Data has, and Geordi is determined to investigate further. Meanwhile, the Enterprise is heralded by the Romulans, and they're like, come and see us, come and visit us, and let's have a chat.
Don't worry about it. Just come over.
Let's go and have a chat.
Yeah,
Should we
it's
have
been
a
too
chat?
long. It's been a
Let's
while.
have a chat. And so Picard, he goes, and all of a sudden they're intercepted by this mysterious cloaked vessel which appears right in front of them. Picard's like, no, don't put the shields up, because I'm guessing that would be like an aggressive thing to do. And so it goes on screen, we're being heralded on screen. And it's not the Romulans, it is instead the Remans,
Yes.
who are like a race that's been, I picked up, they weren't particularly friendly with the Romulans. The Romulans, I think, have subjugated and persecuted the Remans throughout history. And a Reman viceroy comes on the screen, which I learned afterwards was Ron Perlman. I
Yeah.
didn't realise whilst
I
watching
didn't
the
know
film
that.
Unrecognizable.
Wow.
that it was Ron Perlman, but it was Ron Perlman. And I'm thinking, oh, here's the baddie. This guy looks like a baddie, but he's not the baddie. Instead, there's an even baddier baddie.
Yeah.
Shinzon, Praetor Shinzon, who parleys with Picard and the crew in the mysterious darkness, and eventually the lights come up and it turns out it's Tom Hardy, and it's been Tom Hardy all along.
Yeah.
And I thought there was like a crackling tension here. Picard seems to notice something about Shinzon that he's not really letting on. And it quickly is established that Shinzon is in fact a clone of Picard made by the Romulans, probably for nefarious purposes.
I mean, it'd be weird
I
if it was
imagine.
for positive
I
purposes.
imagine
It'd be nice,
it's like,
wouldn't it? We'd nice to do so.
Should we make another Picard? I quite like. We want one of those.
We've got Picard at home.
Assuming they had some kind of plot to infiltrate the Federation. I don't know how they were planning on doing that. My brain went off a little bit at that point. It's like, how are they? Like, say they were successful here.
They did
Would
explain.
they have to hide the original Picard and then put their fake Picard
kill him.
in?
I don't think they'd hide him, Rob.
They'd kill it.
Where is our Picard, Romulans?
Give him back. Come on, we found yours. Well, fair enough.
So yeah, it turns out he's a clone, but the clone project was abandoned by the Romulans for whatever reason, and the clone was left to die basically on this Reman slave
Pretty
planet.
sloppy.
Bit of a loose end.
Should we let him die or should we make sure he's dead?
Yeah.
Oh, let's let him die.
But I think it's discovered that he has some like kind of engineering he's designed basically to age very quickly to Picard's actual age.
I quite like this.
But that doesn't happen, and essentially it means without that prompting, he's just dying. He is dying, and the only way he can continue to survive is by getting Picard's blood, and so that's why Shinzon wants Picard. He wants to capture Picard, and I was like, okay, I get his deal, and then ultimately it's like, actually no, let's just destroy everyone and destroy the Earth. He's just a very, very evil man.
Well, I think destroying the Earth was actually Plan A. The Picard bit's kind of Plan B.
Well, he wants to stay alive and destroy the Earth.
Yes, he wants to stay alive to destroy the Earth.
Good motivation.
So there's quite a nasty scene where the Reman Viceroy, via some kind of telepathy, is able to get inside the brain of Riker whilst he's having a romantic time with Troy.
He doesn't get in Riker's head. He gets in Troy's head. She's hallucinating.
She sees Riker replaced.
By, okay.
Yeah.
It
The
is
other way
still
round.
Riker.
Anyway,
because then he's like, what's the matter?
It's some evil telepathy that he does.
It's evil telepathy.
He gets
Evil
inside
telepathy.
Troy's head, and by doing that, he's able to somehow infiltrate the computer systems on the Enterprise, which allows him to sort of like mid-sentence beam Picard aboard the Warbird.
Well, it's Data's replica, isn't it? B4. B4 is the one who gets into the
I think the
computer system.
Troy stuff is just nasty.
It's just
It's
nasty.
just nasty for the sake of nasty.
I'm going to
And
bring
the-
that up later, yeah.
And the beaming, the plan is B4 is obviously the decoy, and he's going to be used as a inside agent. But Data realizes that's what the extra port's for, and that's how he anticipates it.
Oh, I see. I didn't pick up on that. Okay. Well,
It's such a good plan.
in any case, Picard is unceremoniously beamed aboard the Warbird and captured.
Yeah.
And it looks, for all intents and purposes, like he's just going to be used there as like a little blood farm for Shinzon to use whenever he wants to. But Data has done a clever switcheroo and Shinzon thinks it's B4 on board the Warbird, but it's not. It's Data, and Data, like an absolute hero, breaks Picard free, and they do like a little escape action sequence through the ship, and that's fine for now.
Yeah, that's fine.
That's fine for them. They managed to get away, but Shinzon's plan escalates. And he's clearly dying. His veins are full of poison and toxins, and he's not in a good way. And he's basically like, well, let's just destroy the Earth. We're going to destroy the Earth. Going to destroy the Earth. And the Enterprise chases the Warbird down. And 2 Romulan ships arrive to help the Enterprise. But even the 3 of them combined are not enough to defeat the Warbird, which for some reason has just been built. And it's one of the most technologically advanced, dangerous, weaponized ships ever in Star Trek land. And it has like a very dangerous form of radiation on board. I can't remember the name of it, but it's like the equivalent
Thalaron,
to
I think.
Thalaron radiation, which I'm guessing is the same substance that was used at the beginning to assassinate the Romulan Senate.
I believe so.
And it looks like they're preparing to fire, as with all very dangerous weapons of mass destruction in sci-fi movies. The preparation of the firing of this thing takes a while.
Yeah.
So it's like, quickly, we've got to stop them both before they fire. Data heroically puts like a little transport device on Picard to transport Picard back to the Enterprise, and with seconds to go, Data also, before this, he did an amazing jump from the Enterprise to the Warbird through the vacuum of space after the Enterprise had rammed the Warbird, which I thought was cool.
Yeah, it was good.
And with seconds to go, Data destroys the weapon, therefore blowing up the Warbird and sacrificing himself to save the day. Everyone's very sad. But Data's downloaded all his thoughts into B4 anyway, and so who cares? There's another Data.
Yeah.
And it's going to be fine. And Picard smiles as he walks off, hearing B4 doing a song.
Yeah.
It was a bit of a Groot situation, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yes, very much so. Well, I mean, that is definitely a synopsis of Star Trek Nemesis, for sure. I'm very interested to hear your kind of top-level take. Did you enjoy it?
I didn't think it was a particularly good film, but I did enjoy it. Yeah.
That's interesting. How about you, Nath?
I really liked it. I was really surprised.
Oh, well, I was really surprised. I really didn't like it.
Ah, fair. Interesting.
I really...
Well, Dave's wrong.
And it's funny because I think I even said breaking our rules.
Do you even like Star Trek, Dave?
Breaking our rules, I even said to Nath before the film yesterday, like, this is one I actually enjoy. And I thought that. I would have told you that I enjoyed... Well, I did. I told you I enjoyed it.
I enjoyed this film.
I suppose I haven't watched it for... I don't know, 10 years or something. And it didn't land for me at all this time. All I had was problems. It's funny having, obviously last week we talked about Insurrection and about that thing of as soon as you're not on board with something, they stack up. And it was the same this time.
What was the bit that got you off board?
I think it was Picard's best man speech.
I didn't like that.
What's wrong with that?
I thought it was bad.
He's just being nice.
It was indulgent, wasn't it?
It was indulgent. I didn't think it was good. I didn't think... honestly, I would think Patrick Stewart would be an amazing best man, and Picard even more so.
Picard, he was way too unbuttoned. It was way too off. He should have been more like, I respect and all of that business.
Will Wheaton was there. Did you notice Will Wheaton?
Yeah.
And this was a big issue. I thought this was quite a big issue throughout the movie, was that I felt that they had just given up on any audience that wasn't a big TNG fan.
Really?
I thought they were just like, look, if you don't know...
Well, how much do you know about Stuart Baird and his relationship with this movie? Because I've read up a little bit on this.
Oh, what you got?
The director.
The Stuart Baird was not a fan of Star Trek.
No.
And in fact, a lot of the crew took issue with his handling of the direction of this film. A lot of the character scenes were cut entirely, including all of Will Wheaton's dialogue.
Oh, right.
And apparently to the extent where he couldn't even remember the names of the principal cast on set most of the time.
Wow.
He treated it with disdain, I think.
That's very strange.
Is a nice way of putting it.
But it's funny, I can't think of loads of examples of what I mean, I guess, because I remember thinking at the time that there's no way in here if you don't know, like Will Wheaton. Who's that guy? Guinan again.
I think
but then also I felt
big themes are you have to know who Picard is to care about this film.
And then also I felt like it does so much stuff. It undoes so much Star Trek stuff. It just sloppily painting around like, we don't worry about that. Don't worry about that. Which is much more what I would expect from a director who has no relationship to Star Trek.
I wonder why I really liked it. I was reading. Again, it's called The 50-Year Mission, and it's a book in 2 parts. It's oral history I've mentioned. And it does talk about Marina Sirtis. Her quote is just, Stuart Baird was an idiot. That was what she said, what you said, Rob. But I really liked it. And I think I'm ready to robustly defend this film.
Oh, cool.
And I enjoyed it way more than I thought. It's the only one I've really changed my opinion about. And I think it comes down to, I did notice, I thought that the amount of, as we were talking in the last episode, the amount of scenes that Stewart and Spiner got, and they get like an action sequence on their own and stuff, I was thinking, well, this is really starting to distort maybe like the screen time, or maybe that just fed through from the new creative team. But I thought when I first watched it and wasn't particularly excited by it, I didn't have all of the same, I wasn't like primed with like Picard and Next Generation kind of knowledge and enjoyment and familiarity in the same way I am now. So I thought it was a really interesting story. It had enough Trekness because it was talking about, the mirroring. Obviously, there's 2 mirrorings going on. They're mirroring each other. Where there's Picard and Chinzon, and then there's Data and B4, and they're going through kind of similar journeys, and they're confronting versions of themselves and wondering if the versions of themselves show their own limitations or show their own achievements. And that's like the crux of it for both of them. And the thing I really thought was that Tom Hardy's subsequent career really strengthens this film, because now he has as much gravitas in those scenes retrospectively, and because the performance is quite good. But the first time I saw it, I thought, who is this skinny guy, like with bad makeup, trying to act against Patrick Stewart? And now I look at it, and the lots of, Hardy is an unusual performer, and he's up and down. I love some of the stuff he's done, and less so other bits, but there's really something to it which I think adds to those scenes, and it elevates everything for me. And then I thought the action was pretty good, and it was just sort of zipping along. I thought it was the best action that we've seen in Next Generation. I enjoyed the tension of First Contact, but
I don't disagree with any of that. I thought, like, I always enjoyed Tom Hardy's performance even before he went on to bigger and better things. I think he is good. I think that the broad strokes of a Picard clone is really cool and really interesting. I don't have any issue with that either. And I think it actually makes sense as well, like as a kind of plot. Yeah. I can understand the Romulans going down this road and Also, I like the fact that the clone is bald. Yeah. Suggesting that Picard was just born bald and he's always been bald. Yeah, and I thought they were going to explain that, but with this condition that he has.
It's just movie stuff, right? It's just movie stuff. We've got to make the clone. He's got to be young Patrick Stewart, but he's still got to be bald.
Yeah.
So
they show him at the academy, and he's like, he's bald at the academy. Okay.
But I think, I felt to its detriment, it was an action movie. And that's not to say action movies are bad, but I felt like, again, it was just like, we should have a cool scene with a car. We'll have a car chase. We should have a cool scene where the ship flies through the ship because it can't go out the door for some reason that we don't really understand. Like the whole Troy stuff, I really didn't like that. I mean, obviously, not who's going to like that, but it was like, was that so we can have a sex scene? And it's so weird, the idea that Picard's clone is like, I like human women. Viceroy, let's get me in her head. And
I didn't understand what the point of it was, from what motivation they could have had for doing it, apart from being provocative, because at that point they're not trying to be openly evil either.
No.
And then that's a bit of a red flag. It did set up the return scene at the end where she is able to kind of travel back down that feedback loop and then find the position of the enemy ship, which I liked. And again, I'm always thinking about the actors talking about how much they get to do and whether they can do anything apart from, you see a lot of Troy on the helm and stuff, and I like that she got a moment.
I really like Troy, and I don't begrudge her character any of those moments, apart from I do think it's nonsense that she can now find a person in three-dimensional space and translate that to a screen by just with her eyes shut, going like, hang on, Worf left a bit. No, like what? That makes no sense, and it's silly.
It doesn't make much sense.
I know, but it's okay for things to be silly.
Action moment, I enjoyed it, and I enjoyed that. I mean, if I had a criticism, it would be still, it leaves a bad taste in my mouth that that the moment that she got, even though she comes out on top at the end, and it didn't get horrendously graphic, it's still framed around sexual violence. That's that's a low-hanging fruit that they could have avoided.
And I also don't know. I think it's supposed to be like a kind of nice, powerful moment where Picard refuses her to be relieved of duty. Like, hey, no, if you can keep surviving these horrible attacks, I need you by my side. But I think it's actually like, that's not nice at all. It's like, please let me not.
Of all the moments they could have cut out, I'd have cut out that bit. Just cut out that.
Yeah, definitely.
Because I'd have liked to, I agree with you that I would have liked to have seen, the most interesting stuff for me was when it was really close up on Patrick Stewart and Tom Hardy's faces. Yeah. And you're right, absolutely right, Nathan. At the time of this movie coming out, no one was really going to know who Tom Hardy is. No. Now he's a massive megastar, arguably bigger than Patrick Stewart even was then.
Yeah.
Now watching this movie, seeing these two great actors facing off is a real electric thrill. Because I thought Tom Hardy was really good in this. Thought he was really, like, absolutely, you could sense it in him, even at the start when he's introducing himself. He's got that sort of like Bond villain madness about him that he's trying to suppress as he has like these dignified parleys with the Enterprise and the crew. but it's there bubbling away.
Definitely.
And I guess Tom Hardy brings that to quite a lot of his characters. Maybe that's just Tom Hardy.
Maybe
just
it
like
is. Yeah. But I think you're right.
Fairly suppressed, suppressed rage.
I think it's fascinating that is maybe the only big guest star who really grew afterwards.
Yeah.
It was like a good pick from Star Trek.
Well, I don't know how much you read about Tom Hardy's career after this, but apparently he really went for it in this movie because he felt like it was going to be his big break. And after the lukewarm critical and commercial reception that Nemesis got, he sort of spiraled into depression and alcoholism for a time. I don't think he didn't come back until I think it was 2008 when he was in Bronson.
Oh man.
Where he felt like his career really picked up again. So he had it was a bad time for him after Nemesis.
A wilderness.
And he nearly, I think he contemplated quitting acting.
It's so interesting, isn't it? Because we've all sat here and agreed that it's a good performance and he's good in it.
Mm-hmm.
It's tough. And like, as we heard, previously, this film came out amongst actual titans of cinema.
Yeah,
like,
right.
Yeah.
Of course, no one's going to watch it and it's going to get overlooked largely. Like, it's a really tough to sort of stake your career on it in that way, I suppose, and it's a shame that he felt that way because it is a really good performance. I wonder how he feels about it now, if he looks back and thinks,
I'd like to
I'm
hear
proud
about
of that. Or
because just visually, by the end, like he's the most obviously evil villain I think we've seen in Star Trek. Like
The physical
his
deterioration
face is just
great.
pulsing with evil, but it's also that kind of tragic kind of evil because he's obviously a mirror of Picard, and there's this whole sort of nature versus nurture argument going on throughout the film. Like, are we a product of our genetics, or are we a product of our choices and our environment and the people who we surround ourselves with?
Yeah.
And there's that scene where Picard's trying to reach out to him and to tell him you can be more than what you're doing now. You still have a choice.
A great scene.
And you can almost feel it a little bit in Shinzon. I think Tom Hardy's great in this one particular moment. You can see
Reaching out to it.
tiny little mote of light at the bottom of his heart, and Shinzon almost grasps it. But then he just no, I'm going to destroy you all. And it's just, it's a great moment.
It's great
really
Picard
good.
as well. That's Picard at
Yeah.
his best, where he's not just lecturing everybody, where there's a positivity to the things that he's saying.
should we talk very briefly about Shinzon's death? Is there any better show of how evil you are
it's
than
great. I'm
by
convinced that a year earlier they'd seen the Uruk-hai.
I was going to say,
Aragorn
that is
stabbing the
only-
Uruk-hai. Have you seen that bit in the film? We should do that.
Yeah.
Have me do that.
There's a really
great.
great horrible sound of his body sliding down the pole. I don't know if you heard it. It really set my teeth
What
on edge.
I didn't
It's like,
understand, because it was like Picard was trapped there. Why didn't he just step sideways?
Yeah.
And he looked like he was trapped.
I-
When Data came in, he's like, oh, Data.
To be honest, I thought it was a great death, but actually, if you watch it, which we did, it's very slow and weird. He's like, I'm going to stab you. And then he the cut is quite awkward where he bends the pipe down. It's like he definitely should
The pipe
have avoided
seems
that.
to bounce off him a little bit. As well.
Right. It's
I
not
was
great.
going to say about Shinzon, and one of the things I wanted to know when we started this, and Blade Runner is always the big example. I really wanted to find a film which Blade Runner was already accepted as being a really good film when I was grown up and reading about these things and learning about these things. And at the time it came out, loads of people thought it was rubbish, and then they changed their minds. And I can't think of a movie. I'm always interested in the idea that there will be something which has come out during my lifetime, which I dismissed originally, and then I go back to and I think it's really, really good. And I don't think that this film is that good.
No.
But this performance, it's just interesting to go we can all be collectively quite wrong about something.
Yeah.
And I think that obviously Tom Hardy's performance in this has not changed, but what he has given us afterwards colours our experience of it. And so I that for me is one of the more interesting things that's happened in the whole course of doing this.
Yeah, definitely. I want to talk a little bit about one of the things I really didn't like, and which I feel kind of undoes some Star Trek, and it's before. I think that, it's interesting because a lot of this is I don't like to be a fan who gets caught up in but that would never happen because of this episode 7 of season 3. I do feel like, having watched all of TNG and really cared about it, that I find it hard with some of these things. Before is one of those things. For example, it's crazy to me, given that so much is made of Data being the only android, and then obviously there's Lore, which is already okay, well, there's 2 now.
Yeah.
That they can just shove in a near perfect kind of replica, if maybe slightly technologically inferior, that it is completely just. I just can't get past that the Remans somehow have a prototype of Data, and they have this whole weird plan where they take him apart, stick him on a planet, and hope that the Enterprise is going to find him.
The thing, my entry point into being not very happy about this is just that they're on the bridge, and this happens all the time. It's just a kicking off point for a scene or a plot strand, and it's a beep, and Worf goes, "Sir, we're getting this signal," and it's like, what? So you're light years away from this planet, and we're just getting this signal. Surely you're getting signals from everywhere all the time.
Yeah.
Like you've just detected there's a positronic signal.
I think this is the kind of stuff that you can get too bogged down in. We don't need to worry.
I think we do need to worry about there being another Data. Like that is massive.
I mean, you
in
can
Star
worry
Trek.
about it. I'm like, okay,
I am
fine,
worried about
robot.
it. I think it's just. I
Probably
think it's quite,
thousands of them.
I think it's quite poor, and I haven't finished with B4 yet because I think he's quite annoying as well. It's another bad Brent Spiner performance, and no offense to him. And I think that his existence and the end completely undoes the whole purpose of the film. The whole point of the film, it appears to me, is that, because Shinzon's thing is like, if you'd lived my life, you'd feel like I feel. And everyone else, and Data kind of sums this up, is like, that's not true. I'm an individual, and I believe that. And I'm like, that's good. That's a powerful message. Data dies, which we should talk about too. And I thought it was, by the way, I thought it was great and quite moving. And then at the end of the film, B4 effectively shows some sign of being like a bit like Data.
Yeah,
and Picard's
agree.
like, that's great. It's a copy of Data. We've got a Data copy. This is brilliant. Which is completely at odds with.
That was weak. It felt like the movie trying to have its cake and eat it. There's the whole sort of Spock thing at the end of Wrath of Khan.
It's very much
like
the same.
we're going to kill Data. It's going to be powerful, but to make everyone happy, we have to let everyone
backup.
know that there is a Data coming back.
I would
might be there.
I would love to know whether it was them being set with going like, we don't want to necessarily say Data's dead forever, because that's what it smacked
I
of.
think that's
and
100% what it was.
I think the whole film, like all of B4, doesn't need to exist to make this film work at all. They just wanted that scene at the end, which I think is rubbish, and it is at odds with the actual message of the film.
I think there are some sort of nuts and bolts elements of needing to give your 2 stars something to do. It's weird in a way that they've given them such closely aligned storylines. I didn't hate B4 in the same way. I do think that there's an ultimate sort of cul-de-sac in the moral reasoning of the main, because I came away from the film basically going, I do believe that we are conditioned by nature and what we, nurture and what we experience. And I'm still glad that Picard won. It didn't make me any less. What are you supposed to do if there's an evil copy? Sure, you can maybe say, I am lucky. You acknowledge your privilege. That's all you can do. So the end didn't to me undo the rest of the work. I was annoyed by B4, and I would say because we've come to this crossroads before, Rob, where like Dave and I maybe point stuff out, and I can see you're just quite annoyed by it, and I get it, and I think it's worth talking about just because it's a fandom thing which I resist also, but then sometimes you can feel yourself getting drawn into it, and I try not to, and really it's about, is it fun? Am I enjoying it? Yeah. But really, I do also think that there is, what's the right way of phrasing it? I think that there obviously, if things are put together and we're told stories in, I don't want to say it's like shoddy. But I do think there's a level of, you just need to get over a certain threshold of believability, right, and enable us to suspend our. And obviously, it's a grey area, and it's almost a dangerous one to open up to fandoms because they can become extremely entitled. So I try and be good-natured about it, but it's also difficult. Then I think when the legacy of a series, is kind of what Dave is saying, rests so much on something which you then decide to move the other way against. That's where I think as creators you have to be quite careful. But I also agree with. If I heard anyone apart from us talking about this, I'd probably say just shut up. So I do agree.
Here's the thing, though, right? I think it's just laziness because it's lazy.
I'd love to go into the writers' room and be like, how do we get them? How do we get them to go to the Romulan neutral zone, though? Why would they even go there?
You sound like the internet, Dave. That's not what you're just. The lazy writers have ruined Star Wars and Star Trek.
But I admit I hate everyone on the internet as much as as you guys. But maybe they're right. But my point is, if there is this big body of work, the thing is, there's a million ways to get them to do whatever. Surely, why does it have to be? Another thing I was thinking, right? Another way that it undoes, maybe this will really annoy you guys too, is they make a point of saying that the positronic signal is coming from a planet. What kind of planet is it? It's a pre-warp civilization. So they haven't got warp technology. If you've watched Star Trek, if you've watched some of these movies, you will know that then the Starfleet officers should be extremely
doing a donut as soon as he gets out of the shop.
They should be extremely careful because it means that the Prime Directive states they should have no contact with these people whatsoever. Rather than that, he's like, this is an opportunity for the car, I think. And the thing is, they don't need to be a pre-warp civilization. So why not just write? It's just a planet. It's a desert planet with some people on it who've got warp. Why is it important to tell us specifically we're going to break our own rules here? Why?
I think that this is like a bar of tolerance, right? And almost every story's got something which kind of nudges the bar. Ooh, the levels are moving a little bit. And for me, Insurrection was like immediately the bar is full and I hate this film. Yeah. And for me, it just didn't bounce.
Maybe there were scenes originally where they encountered the pre-war civilization and it was important in some way. Like, it's so hard to know how many iterations this screenplay has gone through. There's a bunch of stuff cut from the movie and little dregs of old plot just get
I hear what you're saying, Rob, but it just
doesn't matter.
It does matter because it's such an important, it's an integral part of the hours and hours and hours and hours of Star Trek that I've watched. The Prime Directive, there's loads of it. It's the moral fabric of it. Stop laughing at me. It's really important.
I'm not laughing at you.
But also,
it doesn't matter to Picard at this point.
But I've seen it matter to Picard. That's my point. It matters to Picard. Again, I've seen that character has wrestled with the Prime Directive and this stuff loads. It's important to him. And with your point to it about the screenplay or whatever, it's a line. They could just take it out.
It's funny that in the last movie, he's like 600 people. How many will it take for this to be wrong?
Exactly.
We won't move them. And in this movie, he's like, shoot them all.
Yeah. It's just, I just think it's quite sloppy and I don't know what we've gained.
I'm in the middle here. I kind of agree with you. I think the bigger picture, it probably, if there's enough going for the rest of the film, it doesn't matter. I do feel like ultimately, if a fan or an audience doesn't respond to a thing, even if there's a really good reason it came about, you know what I mean, you have to.
They've just, the thing is, right, if you took away B4, you take away that planet, you take away the end, which undoes the supposed, the supposed like moral of the story. And you'd still be left with all the things you need to make the film work, because apparently there's also a telepathic alien who can speak to Troy, and so could have worked.
You wouldn't know, Dave, because Brent Spiner would say, "What am I doing in this film?"
You've got a great death scene.
Brent Spiner's being an absolute hero.
You've got a great
was an absolute badass.
But that's what I'm saying. If you take B4 out, then he doesn't get to play two roles.
He doesn't
get to go behind enemy lines.
He still gets to jump through space and be the hero and have a death scene.
I guess he doesn't have all of the character work in it. He would just be an action hero in this film if it wasn't for B4.
I liked as well seeing Data be disappointed in a version of himself, and that kind of does, as a fan of TNG, does talk to me a little bit about how far he's come, and now he's further along. Does he have the patience to bring somebody else? B4
his final bits. He's making such an individual choice when he chooses to put that little transporter on Picard.
Yes.
He's going against what he knows Picard's wishes would be. Like he offers it to him earlier in the film, and Picard's like, "No, you will be taking that, obviously, and I will be staying here." But he doesn't even hang about. It's like, "This is what I'm doing. I've decided. This is my choice. There you go. You're safe now, Captain. I'm sacrificing myself." It's a great moment. He's realised finally that he is an individual.
Can I bring up the idea, because this is the last of the Next Generation movies? Did either of you get the sense in relation to the Data dying and the echoes of Spock dying and crashing the Enterprise again, trying to start a destruction sequence again, do you feel like there's only so many things you can do? You go to the well so many times. Were you getting that sense like this?
Yeah. Again, well, I think that this is an action movie, and that was the starting point for all of this. And so I feel like they were just again ticking action boxes. It would be cool if they crashed. I didn't really love that bit. I'm so used to that moment in movies and in Star Trek especially, where they're like facing a no-win situation, and then Picard someone says something and he says, of course, and the penny's dropped, and his penny drop moment was just to crash the Enterprise into their ship. And the problem I had with it was we've just seen them zipping around loads really fast, and then suddenly they moved very slowly towards the scimitar, and Tom Hardy's like, quick, hard to port, oh God, and they're like,
maybe they were too close. I tell you what I did enjoy, and again I feel like because you're trying to create those moments. I can't get over Spock dying, major character death, crashing the Enterprise for the first, like blowing up for the first time, the saucer section crashing. These are kind of the big, we can really play with the series on the big screen moments. To me, having the view screen blow out,
that was cool.
That was cool.
That was really cool.
Was like just a bit of variation on the theme.
I really like that, and I really liked that he was then literally looking at the ship, that they were kind of eye to eye. I thought that was a really cool thing.
The little on-screen joke was good. On screen.
Yes. Obviously.
We don't have a screen.
Open a channel.
Lol.
If my last complaint, I promise, as a Star Trek
It's
fan,
not finished.
As a Star Trek fan,
This is what happens to fandoms at the end of the series. They get really toxic.
I didn't really understand. I've probably got actually quite a few more complaints, but let's just pick the one I didn't really understand. Did you understand the kind of Romulan ladies' whole deal?
No.
Because she was like,
no,
I'm going to kill a bunch of people to put this guy in power.
Yeah.
Then I'm going to try and maybe seduce him, or maybe she just already fancied him. And then instantly be like, oh God, he's actually quite dangerous. We shouldn't have done this. I'm going to become friends with
to the point where I was
Federation.
Like, was that the same lady all the way through the film? Why did I get that wrong?
And, obviously it's a big deal. The Federation and Romulan Empire are massive enemies, and at the end it's kind of like, after this one little fight we had,
you've got my number, Picard.
now we're like maybe friends, and I'll put in a good word with everyone. It's like, it didn't really hang together.
Was a bit of a left turn for me. Jim Robinson from Neighbours turning to stone as well.
Yes.
Right at the beginning. That's one of my big complaints, obviously. How dare they?
Yeah.
What are your other complaints? Rattle through them. I'd like to hear them.
I don't know. I think
go back to my complaint document on my phone.
I don't know. I mean, I've already complained about a lot of it, just not in the way I maybe felt I would. But I think it is weird. I think it's quite weird to have a Picard clone and then make him do such horrible stuff, like try and have mind sex with Deanna Troi.
Yeah.
I'm like, that is weird. And what is his relationship with the Viceroy, where he's like, Viceroy, stick your hands on my head. I'd like to go in that lady's mind while she's having sex.
How did they know she was
so
in bed? Weird,
especially because it's like this revered character's clone. It's just a really
the weird thing for me watching that scene was I was like, it's a soft sex scene with Riker, and then I was like, just looking at him, he's all naked. And I was not expecting it, I guess what I'm saying.
I've got another nice bit of trivia on that scene if you want to hear it.
Yeah, let's do it.
Oh, God. What bit of trivia on that scene? What could it be?
Jonathan Frakes refused to shave the hair on his back, and so they digitally removed the hair on his back.
Representation for hairy-backed men.
What cost? I wonder what the cost was. Many thousands of dollars, surely. It's like, we could just get this big razor.
Frakes.
He was like, unless Marina Sirtis gets in the bath with me again and actually shaves my back, I won't
my general take on this film is that I always thought they'd done 2 duds in a row that was set in stone in my mind. None of the cast seemed to really like it. I think it's actually pretty great. And it's not a bad thing.
Darn sight better than Insurrection. Surely we can all agree on that.
Heck yeah.
Oh, come on, Dave. It's so much better than Insurrection.
Insurrection's rubbish, man.
But what did I enjoy more?
Even on a shallow pantomime, it's the baddie and it's the goodie and they're blowing each other up level. There's some peril and entertainment here. Yeah. Tom Hardy's an evil man. He wants to blow up the earth.
There's no one running around on hills.
Look, I'm objectively know that you're absolutely right. I don't disagree. And let me remind you, I would have told you, if you'd asked at any point before today, that I really liked Nemesis and I thought it was a good movie. And that's and now I don't feel like that way. It's just on this, and I would have also told you that I didn't like Insurrection, and I do think Insurrection is rubbish, but I enjoyed watching Insurrection.
I
think
can't believe
more
you've taken my place as the contrary opinion haver on this podcast.
Yeah, I think it is contrary. I'm surprised. I'm as surprised as you are. I really am. I did think we should talk about it just quickly. The Data's death scene. I did think that really. I thought that was really quite moving, and a really good end for him. Very sad. I really liked the kind of switcheroo, I guess, moment for the people on the bridge who thought that Picard was dead and then turned around and he was there. That moment of like, oh, phew. And then, wait, where's Data? I felt really sorry for Geordie because it just kept showing. We kept seeing Geordie, and Geordie's like Data's best mate, and everyone else like seemed to have someone and have a hug, and Picard could be like, I'm off to my ready room, and Geordie would just have to be stood there really sad by himself.
Rob, imagine if Dave died and then we were left with someone who looked exactly like Dave with the mind of a child that we kind of had to look after.
You'd move on so quick. I never saw the sun.
And it would be our job to like show him Star Wars.
Exactly, yeah.
And make sure he likes it.
You like this, all right?
Yeah.
You love Nemesis.
We'll show you the Phantom Menace first.
I did think it was really good though, and I thought it was the right. Although I was a little bit disappointed because I didn't know when you told me that, or us, that originally he'd asked to be killed in Insurrection.
I didn't even. The payoff to that was on his script. It said, "Sorry, kill you later," which I didn't even put into the.
I always want it to be right for the story, not right for the actor. You know, it's a bit like Han Solo dying. Like it's cool. It's a good moment. Sorry, but I knew that he wanted that. Yeah, and I want it just to be right for the story. And I think it actually was right in Nemesis. It felt, I didn't think it, apart from the B4 thing that undoes it.
It's a strange thing. Again, I feel like it goes back to that the different rules around ongoing TV versus films, and character death means a different thing in both places. But you can't. There's like a real sort of sterile stability to the Next Generation cast on the big screen, where they end up just doing the same things over and over again. Something needed to happen. It's a shame it's almost exactly the same as what happened to the original series, but there we are.
So this should be interesting. Let's have a little chat about standout character and standout scene. Rob, shall I start with you? Would you like to tell me about your standout character or performance?
It's got to be Tom Hardy.
Yeah.
By a long way. I thought he was by a long way the most interesting villain I've seen in a Star Trek movie up until this point as well.
Yeah.
Just scary, a real sort of maniacal energy to him, an unpredictability, like just really good, but also like a tragic lost humanity at the core of him as well.
Yeah.
Almost like Darth Vader, like in that sense, where you can tell that somewhere deep down, but unlike Darth Vader, he does not get a reprieve.
No.
And I thought just very interesting character and really strong performance from Tom Hardy.
I totally agree. The only thing, and it's probably because I wasn't massively enjoying the movie, was I kept thinking about actually Tom Hardy wearing that suit.
I enjoyed the suit.
The costume seemed
like a bug-like, oily thing going on with the colours on it.
Can I tell you something else I didn't like? What do you guys think about this? The Tom Hardy's, well, I shouldn't say that, Shinzon telling us his story and the sort of flashback vignettes, like little boy, and then here's the helpful viceroy. I don't think I really like that sort of Vaseline lens kind of.
And yet you were fine with Generations and the Nexus.
What a great movie. I didn't massively enjoy that. But I understand, the purpose of that scene. I liked hearing his story, and we do need to know why he is the way he is. Standout character or performance, Nath?
The same as Rob, for the same reason.
Yeah.
Although I would say I really, really enjoy Patrick Stewart in this one, having been quite let down. I don't think he's given his best since First Contact, really. He hasn't had loads to do in the movies. And I can't remember what I was going to say. So,
do you know what? Oh, and just to make a joke, I could also give a standout performance to Will Wheaton and to Whoopi Goldberg, who
Whoopi Goldberg was in it, wasn't she?
I mean, I really appreciate, Rob, that you mentioned. Was it Rob? I really appreciate, Rob, that you mentioned that all of his scenes got cut, and because the director Stuart Baird just didn't really care for the cast at all, because I was like, if I at first just thought that was always the plan, and it seemed so strange to me for him to be there and for Guinan to be there. And also, just for your benefit, Rob, just so you know, the admiral who gives Picard his orders is Captain Janeway. Well, actually now Admiral Janeway, who's the captain from Voyager, which is that other ongoing series.
Yeah.
So
the lady who tells him to go to the Romulan.
They have a nice
at the start.
Yes. So for all us Star Trek fans, that's like, oh, that's cool.
That's
momentarily.
nice. A nice captain to captain.
Little captain to captain bit. Let's talk about standout scene, starting with you, Nath, just to mix it up. Have you got a standout scene?
I probably the scene I enjoyed the most was Data coming to rescue Picard. I don't know why. I didn't really like him being imprisoned or used as a big blood vial, so I was quite pleased with it. And I thought that the film it signaled it a little bit, but then it kind of gave you that first bit of the wedge of, I think we could gain a tactical advantage, and then no other follow-up scene until the whole thing happened. So I enjoyed that, and I enjoyed the action that you really hated of them escaping.
I didn't hate the action, honestly.
Isn't it weird that they've got ships that fly outside their big ship but also happen to fit perfectly
down the corridors,
like a luge.
Yeah, I also felt it was. No, I'm not going to go into that. How about you, Rob? Have you got a standout?
Yeah,
scene?
I think we've spoken about it before. It's got to be the scene where Picard tries to convince Shinzon to choose better, to be a better man. I just thought that was very powerful.
Yeah.
Both of them, both Patrick Stewart and Tom Hardy. You've got Picard and Shinzon facing off, but you've also got Stewart and Hardy really crackling there. Great stuff, I thought.
I want to ask you, actually, because I'm a bit jealous of you getting to experience it for the first time, and I obviously, it couldn't land for me because I knew what this film was about. How did you find Shinzon's reveal in that scene where he comes down the stairs? I guess specifically, at what point did you have any inkling that he was a Picard clone or any of that until it was kind of spoken about outright?
No.
And then when it is spoken about outright, were you like, oh, that's cool? Or was it just like, okay?
I had no idea that he was a Picard clone until it was spoken about. I quite liked the dramatic reveal of him in the darkness for a time. It was framed in a way that I was thinking, oh, this has to be some kind of, the reveal of him is going to be like a gasp moment for everybody.
Yeah.
But it wasn't.
No, it wasn't.
Picard, it is for Picard because I think he recognises that's me when I was younger. But the audience at that point doesn't know it. So I think there's a little bit of a flop there in terms of something that is the language of the film at that point is signaling to the audience this is going to be a dramatic reveal when the lights come up. And it is for me because I'm like, oh, it's Tom Hardy. But for audiences in 2002, I imagine that felt a bit flat.
Well, it's like the rest of the crew are looking, going, is that? And he's going, what's going on? So there isn't that kind of,
because he doesn't look anything like Patrick Stewart.
Not really. He's bald.
No,
that's
not
it.
really.
We're asking the hair to do a lot. I was going to say one of the things that made me feel better about Shinzon was hearing the writer Logan talk about him as a Napoleon figure, which I just quite liked. And there's lots of the writers when they come to Star Trek have either historical or classics based kind of influences, and hearing and like Napoleon maps onto him because he's someone from an empire but from an unfashionable part of the empire who nevertheless through his kind of brilliance succeeds and then comes to take, and it made me feel better about this backstory which was otherwise fast forwarded from he doesn't exist to he's somehow in charge of the Federation's greatest enemies.
Right, yeah, for sure.
Napoleon.
My favourite scene, if you must ask, it probably is Data's death. I think I really enjoyed. It's quite understated. I think that if you don't know, I don't think you realise until it's happening. What's happening, his plan. I like that Picard doesn't realise what's happening till it's happening. He doesn't have a chance to say anything. There's no nice moment before them, which I think is just smart and quite cool.
Right.
And his just one line is goodbye, and I think he delivers it like nailed on. It's really quite moving, and I like that. Then he saves the day, and as I said, the bridge scene. I think it's a really good send off.
It has different moments because I feel like the parallel has got to be the Spock scene. And
Yeah.
that scene is also great, but it's great. It kind of builds, and it is melodramatic. And you have, like we talked about, the glass and the two characters who've been partners for so long mirrored in that way. And this one, they must have used it as a reference, or they must have been made in distinction from it. And like you said, there's no talk. He just does it. And then they're watching from further away. And then there's the moment of Picard dropping in behind them, all of which just sort of programs it differently. But effectively, I agree, it's a great scene.
I also wanted to say, Rob, I mean, it's probably quite obvious, I guess, but at his wake, when Riker's talking about the first time he met Data, you actually see that in the first episode of Star Trek The Next Generation. He's describing the first scene he has with Data.
Weirdly, I've been watching Picard season 3.
That's not that weird.
Well, no, I guess it's not that weird. But it has callbacks to all of this stuff in it. So
that's cool.
I'm experiencing this in kind of, like the 3D chess that they play in TNG. I'm experiencing it on 3 levels because they show that scene from the holodeck from episode 1 in episode 5 or whatever it is of Picard. And then in the middle of doing that, I watched a film where it also was referenced.
Well, our friend told us that you can watch Picard season 3 without having needed to have watched the first 2 seasons.
That's why I started.
And I'm going to do it too.
I think you'll really enjoy it.
Yeah.
Now's the perfect time.
Yeah.
Because it is literally carrying on from
here.
Yeah.
Yes, I will do that. Okay, should we talk about the critical reception to the movie?
Yeah, it wasn't good. Everyone basically agreed with you, and I think that's got more again to do with the time that it was coming out, where Star Trek was in general, like the fatigue of it. So had a budget of 60 million. As I said, I think the casts were just worth more money at this point, and Stewart was doing the X-Men.
We've done it again. Girl, we've done it again, where we've had a cast who, the more we use them, the more expensive they get.
The more successful this thing is that we've made for them.
Well, I hope they don't do this again with another series of Star Trek movies.
I've got another bit of trivia for you.
Oh, interesting.
Patrick Stewart earned as much in this film alone as he earned for the entire run of The Next Generation.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, that amount is $14 million.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, although, like I said, I think they've got reduced a little bit. Anyway, it only earned $67 million.
Oh,
that
dear.
is terrible.
Well, it's no wonder it almost
Can you
killed
imagine
the
that?
entire franchise.
So you're Rick Berman, right? And Dave, you be the person ringing Rick Berman up to tell him the score, and you have to say, how was my movie done against The Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's got to be a factor.
It's definitely a factor.
in the poor performance of this.
Of course it is. People aren't going to see every movie.
But the world has moved on as we zip to 2009. The world has just moved on. Anyway, Roger Ebert. Oh, I like this actually. It's not very long. Roger Ebert says
It never is with Roger Ebert.
Yeah. Is it 3 words? Or?
It's he's talking about him watching the film. He says, "I'm smiling like a good sport and trying to get with the dialogue when I realise Star Trek is over for me."
Oh,
That's maybe how I felt.
And he's trying. He never really. He gives it 2 stars. He's never really plows into movies. It's just sad. Stephen Holden from the NYT called it a klutzy affair. Everyone was kind of down on it. But again, I feel like a reevaluate. I don't know if the fans have massively reevaluated it, but I feel like the more people will watch it now, with Hardy being who he is, there's a chance. There's a chance.
A lot of my problems with it are Star Trek problems. Like, I think as a film, like as an action film, it holds together pretty well. You know, you don't need to understand who cares about the Prime Directive and all that stuff. Like, I get it. I think that's a bit harsh to say that it's klutzy, because I don't think that's really
That was my
fair.
first experience. It's a lot of dark rooms, isn't it?
There is a lot of dark rooms. Also, what are the chances that a completely alien civilization decided to call their planets Romulus and Remus?
I know. I thought
Crazy.
I thought that might be the universal translator
Right.
translating into human concepts that we would understand.
Okay, that's a good. I like that.
good way
That's a
to
very
explain
Star
it.
Trek
Yeah,
take. Yeah, that's great.
Have we ever seen the Remans before, by the way? I don't think we
I
have.
don't think so. I
They're
don't think we
scary.
knew that they existed before.
Just on a mining planet that never faces the sun.
I think this is their introduction to Star Trek. I wasn't. I don't think I was aware of them before. And it's interesting, Rob. I was going to ask, like, if you were, I don't know, this is a bit maybe mean of me to ask, but were you at all confused by the Romulans, because they look a lot like Vulcans?
I've heard the term Romulans through various Star Trek movies
We've
before.
met a Romulan before, and she looked nothing like the Romulans in
Was
this
it
movie.
in the unicorn movie.
Yes, it was Final Frontier.
Yeah.
She's the
There's a
Romulan ambassador.
who's in cahoots with
Why were their faces
Cybok.
kind of green?
They look like Vulcans.
They are. They're dark elves and
Right, okay.
wood elves.
And
know that.
their faces being green. I noticed, especially the lady, she had like loads of makeup, green makeup on her face, and then they just stopped at the neck, and they were like, and then just normal human neck.
I don't know.
It's
Yeah.
like they just gave up on
Maybe I don't know.
like trying to make her look at all like an alien. And
Maybe
just
it's like the version that they've put on the Blu-ray or something. It makes the colours pop in a different way, but it was.
I thought I
noticed-
noticed some really heavy colour work going on
Oh yeah.
during the buggy action sequence on that
Yeah.
planet. There was
Big filter.
quite difficult to watch.
Tony Scott energy.
I think, yeah, it's a mixture, isn't it, of it trying to look cool like an action film and make it look like an alien place as well, which sometimes to some people just means like overexposed.
Yeah.
It's really hot on this planet. Rob, I'm excited actually to see what kind of recommendations you might have based on the back of Star Trek Nemesis. I think you have some good ones.
Yeah, it's in talking about clone stories.
You wouldn't.
I do think the best example of a clone story is Metal Gear Solid. It's so good.
Yeah.
So good. All of the questions that Picard is asking of himself in this, like, if my life was like this, if I had encountered these circumstances, would I be evil? Is this inside of me? What am I? Questions of identity is asked so much between. You got Solid Snake and Liquid Snake, like polar opposites of each other, clones of this other guy called Big Boss, who also wrestles with these kind of questions of, is what I'm doing evil? Am I acting out of my own free will? Am I just blindly following orders?
There's
Really
premature
interesting-
aging as well, isn't
Premature aging in Solid Snake, yes, who, because he is a clone, I think is explained away in the narrative that he ages very quickly. But that was also like a reflection, I think, of how Hideo Kojima was feeling by Metal Gear Solid 4. He was like, I'm old and tired of this. And so he makes Solid Snake old and tired of doing the things that he's doing in the game.
Is he called Old Snake in the game, or is that just what
That's-
people call him?
He's officially called Old Snake in the game.
Right.
Yes, like his health bar says Old Snake above it.
Cool.
It's a little joke, but I think the code names for them, they change very slightly throughout each game.
Oh, that makes it easy to understand.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, especially based on the theme of that game. So, like in Metal Gear Solid 5, he's like Punished Snake, Venom Snake.
I assume these were new snakes.
No.
I genuinely didn't
Well,
know.
technically, yes, it is in Metal Gear Solid 5.
We're going to have to do another podcast.
But yeah, Big Boss is called Naked Snake in Metal Gear Solid 3 before he has, it's the beginning of his journey. Like he's got nothing.
And then there's the boss, of course.
The boss,
a
who's
completely
the
different
mentor
person.
of Naked Snake.
Who can forget the ending scene?
But yeah, if you're after a good clone story, look no further than Metal Gear Solid. Also, weirdly, I know we spoke about Aragorn earlier when he kills that Uruk-hai, and the Uruk-hai pulls himself through Aragorn's sword, and then Aragorn's like cuts his head off, and it's great. I was also reminded of Aragorn's scene in The Fellowship of the Ring, where he's talking to Arwen about whether or not he's able to escape his ancestry. Isildur, obviously, being tempted by the ring, having that weakness inside of him, and Aragorn is worried that, is this inside of me? Is this something I'm carrying in my blood? Do I have the strength of will to actually make a choice, and do my choices actually ultimately, do I have the individual capacity to make a choice that goes against what is inside me, what is in my nature?
Man. That's a really good note.
And I enjoyed that a lot. In terms of sci-fi, I didn't really immediately think of anything other than those two things.
I think that's fair enough.
But those were I think it felt to me like the main conflict of this was a very human, personal conflict. I know it has been before. We've got Kirk versus Khan, but here there's like Picard's facing off against a literal clone of himself. It's like you're confronting yourself very literally in this film, and I
thought you were going to say
thought that was-
Moon. The film Moon.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say Moon.
I have seen Moon, but I've only seen it once, and I don't remember enough of it to be able to talk about it with any kind of authority, I'm afraid.
Would
Moving
you?
everyone.
Why would you?
It's that same thing. It's
Right.
It's a clone
Yes.
story.
Oh yes, it's quite obvious now.
But it ties into ideas of it in a slightly different way. The reason I liked your note about Aragorn is I thought that it was two really different ways. I think Tolkien, in a way which I find it hard to relate to, has a kind of a completely different, very conservative, old world conception of heroes and great men, and he does believe in sort of, like the legitimacy of kingship. And I feel like that's present in Aragorn versus say like the stewards of Gondor. Like there are certain men who are like greater, and in his legendarium, they're like literally giant men who live for ages. And then I think by the time you get to Star Trek, there's more of a sort of a meritocracy, but it is essentially the same idea carried forward into a different time. And then in Moon, a clone story is doing something different, and it's framed much more in a kind of idea of this is what capitalism will do to you, and you are, and that idea of individuality, and do we have worth beyond our labour or resource capacity?
I can't remember Moon at all. All I remember is that there's a robot voiced by Kevin Spacey in it.
There is.
That's
ruining
true,
it for everybody.
unfortunately, yeah.
Thanks, Kevin. It's got great soundtrack.
Let's talk about your warp score then, Rob, because as we said, you were at a personal best of 6 after First Contact.
Yeah.
Dropped down to 4 after Insurrection. What's Nemesis done for our warp speed?
We're at warp 5.
That seems good.
I feel like
take that.
we've been like juddering around through some turbulence, accelerating, decelerating. I feel like we've flattened out now at warp 5. I don't know where we can go from here.
I'm pretty sure
6,
that
7, 8.
That means that the TNG era of movies, I think, gained a warp point overall, which I think we're happy with. The good work of First Contact hasn't been completely undone by its
and just I know you won't have enjoyed not enjoying this film because we're not a group of people who like to watch things and then rant about them.
No,
I'm glad that thinking when we started this that the overall kind of big screen legacy of Next Generation was not brilliant. That I've actually really enjoyed 2 of the movies and not so much enjoyed 2 of the others.
Yeah.
So that's a great result for me.
Oh, I'm glad. I'm happy for you.
Thank you.
I think, honestly, I think overall, everyone holds First Contact up as the best one. It's definitely the best one.
Yeah.
It's great, and it's massively overshadowed the others.
Should we do a quick ranking? It's not worth a whole episode on its own, is it?
No, yeah, let's do it. Would you like to start?
It's easy. It's First Contact, Nemesis, Generations, Insurrection.
I agree.
Oh, blimey! You think Generations is better than Insurrection?
And mostly because the stuff with the original cast is really good fun at the beginning.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. Like, if you could take that stuff away, if you took that stuff away, it's definitely the worst movie in my opinion.
Yes.
No, in Insurrection,
It's
one of the worst films I've seen outside of Star Trek as well.
It's so weird, isn't it? Well, I disagree. I'd say I'd still keep First Contact and Nemesis as 1 and 2, but I'd put Insurrection ahead of Generations.
Fair. Just moving the chairs
Generations
on
is really bad. I do think the opening is good, but it's just...
Let's stay positive.
Yeah, but we're staying positive. Anyway, well, let's stay positive by looking ahead, Nath, to the next movie. And as we said, we're at the end of the Next Generation. It's time for a whole new cast.
And I will stay positive by saying that what followed was years of wilderness. So there's like a few years to bridge. I will try and only include, as I go back through pages and pages of notes, only include the highlights of what happened and try and keep it interesting. So when this movie comes out in 2002,
Yeah.
is that? I've completely lost. Completely lost my mind. Enterprise was just starting up, and it wasn't successful really. And Enterprise is cancelled in 2005. I've read a bit about this, and just to conceptualize it and put it into a little bit of context, when the people, especially in the oral history that I was mentioning, were talking about the end of Enterprise, and knowing that there was nothing immediately following it and there was no film in production, it was the first time that Star Trek hadn't been being produced in this specific lot and sound stages and the Paramount lot for 18 years. And people talk about, so Rick Berman was the producer throughout that whole period, but then the Ronald D. Moore and Bannon Braga, these producers had been there for the whole time, and it was when they ended Enterprise, I always used to think of them as separate things, and they launched Enterprise and it wasn't very good. But really, this thing is coming to an end, and there's a big chasm at the end of it. And there's one of the writers on Enterprise called David A. Goodman. He said from 1987 to 2005, there was always a new Star Trek on. It was great. He's a huge fan. It was great. But there was something to be said about being hungry for it again. And then some of the other people just talk about the sheer amount of television that they had made and how many episodes they'd made and how difficult it was to keep it fresh. And really it kind of makes you look at rebooting Star Trek, the original series, into the films. The films become really integral part of the finances of Paramount through the 80s. Then they expand it because it's so popular in the 90s. They kind of overdo it. And so by the end of 2005, they've made 725 episodes of all series together. That includes the original series, animated series, Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, and Enterprise. And they were just having trouble. And also TV was changing in a way where you probably don't make 26 episodes of a show every year, especially not science fiction shows with a special effects budget. So the 50-year mission points out, it just sets the scene in 2005. Nemesis was a box office bust. Enterprise had been cancelled. The official website was closing down.
Blimey.
And the licensed magazine went out of print. So while it seemed like the first time it had been cancelled on TV was the end of Star Trek, really in 2005, people were like, this really is the end of Star Trek. What's happening? So there were some interim projects, people trying to bring stuff back. I'll skip over these very quickly, but some of them are interesting. So in the 90s, they considered doing a Star Trek IMAX film just to take advantage. You remember, sometimes you go to an aquarium and there'd be like a movie about fish.
Yeah.
And it was a similar thing, like you go to a science museum, and they got close to making one of those. And it would have been, there's various kind of projects kind of interlinked to the idea of like a super crew, of all the TV casts at the time. And this one would have centered, it would have used Chief O'Brien as the through line through all of this. So that would have been something. There was a project called Star Trek The Beginning, which I think actually got very close. That's somebody called Eric Yendrason, who was a writer, maybe a showrunner, but on Band of Brothers. That was his big show. So he'd had a big success and he was a screenwriter and he was asked for input. And that would have taken place between Enterprise and the original series. So they're thinking around that kind of era. They would have looked to explore how Starfleet came up with the basis of that mix of militarism and exploration. So kind of getting into the heart of Trek. The same week that he turned in his script, the head of the studio, Donald DeLine, was fired. So it was a go, and then very suddenly it was not a go. The other projects that were knocking around at the time was Bryan Singer, who I think had a cameo in the film we just watched.
Yeah.
And Chris McQuarrie, their group put together a treatment called Star Trek Federation. And the idea of that is that it's a few hundred years in the future and there's been so much peace in the Federation that it's gone stagnant and people start to leave it, but then a big threat called the Scourge starts up. And I quite like that idea because it kind of feels like what's happening to the sort of Western democratic consensus right now.
Yeah, it's funny when you put it like that, isn't it? God, there's so much peace.
Yeah,
Bored.
Exactly. Do we need to be in the EU?
Why?
Let's just leave the EU.
But there's peace,
what
everyone.
could
Peace is
happen?
good.
Do we need to fund NATO? Anyway, don't want to get too real, guys. And part of the reason that this is happening is because Paramount, and I know I'm literally the only person who cares about this stuff, so I'll try not to go into loads of detail, but Paramount was undergoing like some rigorous business changes, of course. So we talked about Charlie Bloodhall in the first few episodes, kind of big Austrian guy who's in charge of Gulf and Western, which owned Paramount. He died in the early 80s. And then the guy who took over from him is called Martin Davis, and he ditches the industrial, non-entertainment or publishing side of the business, and he turns it into Paramount Communications. And then in 1993, Paramount is bought / merges with Viacom, which is why in the last few movies you'll have seen Viacom at the bottom of the big Paramount logo. And that brings on a guy called Sumner Redstone, who'd built up Viacom. The 90s is like this moment of conglomeration again. The business is just, people did it in the 60s and 70s, they're doing it again now. They're just buying stuff. They're making these huge empires, which are then pulled apart a little bit later. So he wins Viacom, fighting off QVC. That was the big merger.
Wow.
Would QVC or Viacom buy Paramount? QVC at that point led by Barry Diller, who had been at Paramount in the 70s.
No way.
Barry Diller's crazy. He's still going. He's in to buy Paramount now. Paramount's on sale, and he's come back with like his Expedia conglomerate. In 1999, they merged with the CBS network. And by the time they get to 2005, which is when this film is going into production, the Paramount Group includes Paramount, CBS, MTV, Nickelodeon, Madison Square Garden, Blockbuster Video, Simon & Schuster, and Showtime Premium Cable, which is like HBO's big rival, and loads of other stuff. So it's just become this huge thing. And it's not really working. So they decide to break it up again. So in 2005 anyway, the upshot of all of that is they decide to divide the company in two, and that means that everyone's fired, which is why Donald DeLine is fired. But it also means there's lots of incoming blood, and there's lots of people trying to reboot. Executives come on and they try and reboot these big franchises. Apparently it was called The Franchise all the way through the 80s and 90s. It was like it was the thing which made them money. So they knew that they needed to bring it back at some point, but they were also very cognizant of how the world had changed and the fatigue in the audience for Star Trek. And so they've been talking to a hot guy who made Band of Brothers, Bryan Singer, who'd had huge success with X-Men, would go on to do Superman. J.J. Abrams signs an overall deal with Paramount following the success of Alias and Lost on TV. And he makes Mission Impossible 3 for them, and it's a big success. And then he gets offered the chance to make the rebooted Star Trek. And eventually he says yes. His team includes Robert Orci and Alex Kurtzman, who wrote Mission Impossible 3 and the Transformers movie, and Damon Lindelof, who's been a kind of a divisive figure in fandom over the last 20 years. His Watchmen series I thought was incredible, and obviously he was one of the big voices he was showrunner on Lost for several years. So it kind of picks up on the Starfleet Academy idea that had been in the ether for decades, something that Gene Roddenberry had even talked about at one point, and had led to the departure of Harve Bennett before the final original cast movie. It just goes into production with Abrams, and he has the momentum to carry it forward. So filming begins February 2007. It's more or less finished at the end of 2008, but it's moved to the summer, which is very not, I think that's a big signal of it not being classic Star Trek. It's not,
right.
They could have got it out for Thanksgiving 2008, but they want to put it in the summer. It's released in May 2009. So Star Trek has been asleep basically from 2002 to 2009. And I think there are a few decades you could be asleep in where you'd wake up and things would be extremely different. Like, people have iPhones now. What's going on? This is lots of years, so I'm going to zip through them quickly on these top 10s. So we can pick up where we left off in 2003. Top 10 guesses?
Return of the King.
Correct. $1.1 billion. Any others? Can you name one more top?
The Matrix Reloaded.
Matrix Reloaded is number 3. Number 2 is Finding Nemo. Number 4, as you mentioned in the last podcast, Rob, it's Pirates of the Caribbean. And number 5, everybody's favourite, Bruce Almighty. Matrix Revolution is also in the top 10. X2, Bryan Singer movie. Dreamcatcher, slightly unpleasant Stephen King adaptation. The Hulk is this year, which there's an undercurrent of Marvel. You can see why in the end Disney bought Marvel and went big with it. Terminator 3 is also this year. Then in 2004, any guesses for the top 5?
Azkaban.
Yes, that's number 2.
Revenge of the Sith.
No, it's next year.
There you had them every 3 years.
Oh,
Come on, Dave.
Every 3 years. There's a lot of computer power needed.
Give us a 2004 movie.
Is it Iron Man time yet?
No, that's much later.
Yeah.
Shrek 2 is the top movie. Spider-Man 2 is number 3. The Incredibles is number 4.
Oh, Incredibles is amazing.
It's the best film Pixar ever made.
Yeah.
And The Passion of the
that's a big
Christ.
Wow. Oh, yeah.
Is number 5. This year also Alien vs. Predator, which I saw at the cinema, was terrible. Chronicles of Riddick, I, Robot, and Primer. If anybody likes a time travel story, I think you'd really enjoy Primer.
I've seen Primer.
I've not seen it.
I really think you'd like it. Very hard sci-fi. It's quite hard to understand. No, 2005. One movie each.
Revenge of the Sith.
Yes. Can you beat Revenge of the Sith? That's number 2. It's like suddenly we're doing Family Fortunes.
I don't know how regularly are they doing the Harry Potter movies. Not every year, surely. Is it every 2 years?
We didn't have one in. Oh, yeah, we did.
2004 was Azkaban.
Yeah. Oh, not that then. I've got nothing, Nate. I can't think of
look at
any
Rob's
movies.
face.
I can't think of
He's
any.
so
I think
pleased.
Goblet of Fire was
Goblet of
2005.
Fire was
yeah.
number 1 in 2005.
Oh.
Number 3 was The Chronicles of Narnia. A genius move to bring, because that
Was that the first Narnia movie in 2005?
yes, $745 million purely off the. It must be. People are like, I really miss Lord of the Rings. I'm going to go and watch this Narnia movie.
It's got the word Chronicles in it.
Yeah, exactly. War of the Worlds is number 4. King Kong is number 5. What a year for sort of genre filmmaking.
Peter
that is.
Jackson.
Yeah. And on the side, Batman Begins is this year. Aeon Flux, Doom, Fantastic Four, and Serenity. So in the meantime, actually the lady at Paramount who greenlights J.J. Abrams' Star Trek was at Fox TV and cancelled Firefly.
Yeah.
Which is a new Trek.
Yeah,
really.
definitely.
Have you seen Firefly, Rob?
No.
Have you seen Serenity, Rob?
No.
Oh, I thought you were going to say that.
Enjoy.
I think you'd enjoy
You'd
Serenity.
enjoy them. I think they might have aged now.
I think Firefly is not worth it.
Really?
As in, I think Rob would go back and be like, nah, I think it has aged.
I watched a couple of years afterwards and I really enjoyed it. 2006, one guess each. Who can get highest?
Oh, this is difficult now.
I can't. What was I doing in my life? Okay, there I was. Yeah. Is it Hot Fuzz that year?
That wouldn't have troubled the global top 10. I think.
I'm not sure about that.
No, I think we're a year away from Order of the Phoenix, I think, still.
Correct.
I honestly can't remember a single movie that came out in
It's
2006.
not a great year. Pirates of the Caribbean.
Pirates 2.
Dead Man's Chest. The Da Vinci Code is number 2 this year. Ice Age, The Meltdown.
Oof.
Inexplicably popular films. Casino Royale was this year.
Ah, of course.
That was a good movie.
A Night in the Museum. And, you know, I think Singer was talking about his version of Star Trek. And lots of people were kind of talking about Batman Begins and Casino Royale being these series resets that it really gave a new foundation. And lots of people were looking for how to do that to Star Trek. Also in 2006, X-Men Last Stand. Disappointing film. Superman Returns. Children of Men. Probably the best film that we've mentioned on this podcast so far. A great film. Although also The Prestige is 2006.
Oh, that's a good movie.
What a time. 2007.
Order of the Phoenix.
There is one film that can beat this.
Oh, my word.
Is it Iron Man?
Nope.
Spider-Man 3.
No, that's number 3.
Something bigger than
It's not
Order of
Shrek the
Phoenix.
Third. That's number 4.
2007.
We've heard the name already in the previous year.
Is it Batman?
Toy Story 3.
They filmed it back to back.
Batman, the other one.
No, for 2006 and 2007, Pirates of the Caribbean.
Oh, of course. Again,
I can't believe Pirates of the Caribbean has
At-
become bigger than Harry Potter.
At World's End. Yeah,
That
it's
seems
crazy.
And that was
nuts.
terrible, that film as well.
Yeah.
Number 5 is Transformers. Also this year, 28 Weeks Later, which I feel more softly about as I get older. The Mist, another Stephen King adaptation.
I
made me
enjoyed
very
that.
Sad. And I Am Legend. 2 more years to go. 2008, you go first, Dave.
Is it Iron Man? It's got to have been around here. I swear, I watched it with my parents in their house.
Iron Man did come out this year, but such was the fortunes of Marvel that it did not trouble the top 5.
Wow.
I'm not sure where it was. in
I'm
the top 10.
surprised. Really surprised.
I'm going to go with The Dark Knight.
That is the top answer. Dave, I'm surprised because you love Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
Oh God, I can remember so clearly watching that at uni with my friends.
Disappointing. Kung Fu Panda was number 3. Hancock. The things that it's like Harry Potter, Pirates of the Caribbean, some Batman movies, kids animation, and Will Smith. Those
Yeah.
are the things which the naughties are.
It's so interesting doing this, just looking at the top 10s and just seeing the kind of ebb and flow of what's in vogue. And then people just think that there's a trend, like you say, like Will Smith's
Let's
massive at the
keep
moment.
giving Will
We've just
Smith
done I
loads
Am
of money.
Legend. That was huge. Let's do
Yeah.
Hancock.
And it worked. Mamma Mia was number 5. So yes, then Iron Man, Prince Caspian was this year, Babylon AD, so Riddick's still kind of limping along, Cloverfield, J.J. Abrams,
Yeah.
it produced, Incredible Hulk is this year, and X-Files, I Want to Believe. So the last year, then this is the year when Star Trek actually emerges, it does not trouble the top 5, I'm not sure it troubled the top 10. What was the number 1 movie in 2009?
Avatar.
Correct. And Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, Ice Age, Something Else, Transformers Revenge of the Fallen, and the disaster movie 2012. Twilight emerges this year. District 9, great sci-fi film. Watchmen, bad sci-fi film.
Yeah.
Also in 2009, the inauguration of Barack Obama. Drag Race premieres on TV, where the credit crunch is still rolling about. Heath Ledger wins a posthumous Oscar for The Dark Knight. Swine flu happens. Parks and Rec and Glee debut on American television, and Disney acquires Marvel. That won't have any effect on And that's it. I didn't do any music because I was tired by that
Fair
point.
enough. Fair. Well, we can all remember 2000. What were you listening to in 2009, Rob?
Oh, God, I don't know.
Were you working at Debenhams at that point?
No, I was working at Wedding TV.
Oh, okay. Right. So mostly listening to...
Black Eyed Peas.
I'm fascinated by your music taste. Really fascinated by it. It's great. An eclectic mix.
Have we ever said publicly the story where we were laughing once in the office just a few years after 2009 about music, and you were teasing Rob for not being current, and he said, "I don't watch Top of the Pops."
Yeah, that wasn't about 2016 when Top of the Pops had been cancelled for about 10 years or something. And he's right, he didn't watch Top of the Pops.
No,
I didn't.
Fair enough. All right, well, I feel primed and ready for Star Trek. It's it's really interesting again, taking a step back and looking at these trends and things, and funny how clearly you can have too much of a good thing or too much of a thing anyway.
Too much of a thing.
And that we just never learn, and you can see it's happening all the time with, I think Star Trek,
Marvel,
Star Wars, sorry, Marvel, even Harry Potter, hearing it sort of slide a little bit down the charts, surprisingly.
But then you imagine if you're in 2003 or 4 and you're a Warner Brothers executive and you've got 5 more Harry Potter movies, you're like, we're going to be all right for a while. This is great.
It is weird, isn't it? Like, Harry Potter's coming to an end. What are we going to do? We need to do some more Harry Potter. We'll have to do that, the Beasts one, the big creatures and the small creatures and the other creatures.
How many movies did they make out of that? Like 5 in the end?
They've definitely done 4, but I think they've got plans for loads.
And now, of course, they're rebooting Harry Potter completely with a new TV show.
I didn't know that.
On HBO.
Yeah.
Wow.
One season per book.
That could be good. I could see that working.
I never want to see another Fantastic Beasts movie as long as I live.
The last one made me actually sad, I think.
I saw one on a plane and then never saw any of the others again.
The first one was absolutely adequate, and then it's just been downhill from there. Anyway, we're not talking about those movies. We're talking about Star Trek and whether Rob is a fan or not. And that's where we've reached now, Rob. We've reached the end of the original films, the end of the TNG films. We're about to take a step into the unknown.
We've only got 4 more times to ask this question.
Yeah. Will you be taking those steps as a Star Trek fan?
Not currently, no.
Fair enough. I did wonder.
He's been consistent.
I really wondered after you enjoyed Nemesis more than I thought.
I've got to say, why on earth else would you enjoy Nemesis unless you're a Star Trek fan?
I'm a Star Trek fan. I didn't enjoy it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well,
but I have previously.
That cuts both ways, doesn't it?
It does. Okay. Well, I'm looking forward to see if J.J. Abrams can change your mind. You've been listening to Redshirt Cinema Club. If you've enjoyed listening, rating and reviewing the podcast would really help us out. We'll be back next Monday with another episode, and in the meantime, we'd love to hear from you. Send us an email to redshirtcinemaclub@gmail.com, where a team of highly trained tribbles await your correspondence. See you next week.